Heaven just shifted, and something holy has begun. You can feel it, a quiet tremor beneath the surface of your life, a gentle movement you cannot fully name yet, but you know it is God's hand setting things in motion. This is the kind of moment that carries weight, the kind that asks for stillness rather than announcement. When God initiates a fresh work, He urges you to guard it with silence. Not out of fear, not because you are uncertain, but because what He just set in place is too precious to expose to unnecessary voices, opinions and energies that could interfere with what is being shaped within you. There is an urgency in this hour, a tender insistence that you resist the desire to explain what you sense. You are stepping into a phase where your words have influence, and they can either shield or harm the unseen progress taking shape. Proverbs 17 verse 27 reminds you that those who carry genuine understanding know when to restrain their speech. That restraint isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the ability to recognize that the most fragile stage of a miracle is its beginning. When seeds are freshly planted, you do not dig them up to prove that something is growing. You let them rest. You let them root. This is the invitation God is extending. Protect the process. The changes forming inside you are not ready for public viewing. Hidden seasons are often the most productive ones, and your silence becomes part of your obedience. When you talk too soon, you give room for envy, interference, and confusion. But when you stay still, you create a shield around what God is constructing. This is why Psalm 131 verse 2 paints the image of a soul stilled. There is strength in that posture. There is trust in that calm. A heart aligned with God's pace grows in confidence instead of rushing ahead with explanations. Transitions like this require maturity. You are learning to hold what is holy without broadcasting it. You are learning to let God guide the unveiling rather than trying to control the timeline. Impatience tries to push you into revealing everything you're sensing, but patience trains you to wait so the blessing can grow properly. Even Isaiah 30 verse 15 reinforces this truth. Strength rises from stillness and trust, not from noise or striving. The miracle forming in your life is not fragile in God's hands, but it can be mishandled through careless conversation. So hold your tongue, guard your atmosphere, keep what God is doing covered until His timing brings it into the open. What He has begun is real. What He has started is unfolding. Your quiet cooperation will strengthen the blessing, not diminish it. Keep your mouth shut for this moment, not out of fear, but out of faith. What God is shaping in the unseen is worth protecting, and your obedience will magnify the miracle already in motion. Friend, silence is not absence. Silence is strategy, because God often works in the quiet places where noise has no permission to enter. You are learning that a still posture is not weakness, but wisdom, especially when something sacred is forming beneath the surface. When God begins shaping a breakthrough, He pulls you into a hush so the transformation can grow without interference. This silence is not punishment, it is protection. You are being trained to recognize that what seems still is actually alive with divine activity. As you step deeper into this truth, you begin to see timing differently. Certain openings only appear for a brief spiritual window, and restraint becomes the shield that guards them. You are not withholding information out of fear, you are honoring alignment. God does not rush holy moments, and when you remain silent, you refuse to let impatience push you ahead of His plan. You safeguard what He is timing with precision. Proverbs 21 verse 23 reminds you that whoever keeps the mouth guarded keeps the soul out of trouble, and in this season, self-control is your strength. Move further with this awareness, and another reality comes into view. The enemy listens for what you reveal. When you broadcast every stirring, every idea, every early beginning, The enemy designs distractions, delays, and discouragements aimed at what you just exposed. Silence stops his strategy before it starts. Staying quiet blinds him. It denies him the blueprint he hopes to hijack. You are choosing preservation over publicity, and that choice is spiritual maturity. Transitioning from warfare to wisdom, you also recognize that not everyone who asks is a friend. Some carry genuine support, but others carry curiosity, comparison, or control. Revealing too soon invites counterfeit helpers who look like allies but function like hindrances. When you protect your emerging testimony, you avoid partnerships built on flattery rather than purpose. Restraint filters motives in a way words never could. As you keep things close, God shows you who is truly assigned to walk with you. Then comes the surprising part. Silence preserves wonder. Surprise is often God's signature of sovereignty. When he moves suddenly, beautifully, and unmistakably, it becomes clear that no human hands engineered it. Your calm gives him room to display his authority openly. He reveals what he wants when he wants, in the way that brings him full glory. This quiet becomes the canvas on which God paints something undeniable. Shift again, and you discover how stillness cultivates faith. Acting without applause forces you to depend on God alone. You are no longer fed by external validation. You are strengthened by internal conviction. Psalm 4 verse 4 urges you to meditate in your heart and be still, because stillness anchors trust in the one who called you. When no one claps you, learn to move because God spoke. When nobody notices, you discover stability rooted in obedience rather than attention. As your faith grows, you begin to understand how silence creates space for God to speak directly to the people he is aligning for your future. Your words are no longer needed to convince or explain. He prepares hearts, opens minds, and arranges support without your voice having to negotiate. What he orchestrates in private will stand publicly because it was birthed without human manipulation. Moving into practical obedience, you also learn to restrain your urge to post every revelation, defend every accusation, or explain every transition. Keeping unnecessary details off public platforms is not retreat, it is stewardship. You are guarding what is sacred from being handled carelessly. The less you explain, the more God can explain for you. He justifies, he clarifies, he reveals in his own timing. As all these lessons converge, you witness acceleration. A posture of stillness invites divine momentum because you are no longer slowing the process with overthinking, oversharing, or over-explaining. You remove human negotiation and allow God's hand to guide the entire journey. Lamentations 3 verse 26 declares that it is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord, and you are discovering how powerfully true that is. Every premature announcement hands the enemy a blueprint, but every moment you choose the hush, you keep the blueprint hidden, where no dark strategy can reach it. You are discovering that restraint is not suppression, it is a spiritual shield. When something holy is forming, silence becomes the sanctuary where God completes what he began without interference. This is not about withholding excitement, it is about refusing to expose what is still tender to forces that would gladly sabotage its development. As this understanding settles into your spirit, another insight rises with clarity. Early talk forces God to compete with human narratives. The created can never outrun the creator. When you rush to publicize what God whispered in private, you unintentionally invite other voices to shape or influence what he intended to unfold untouched. The moment you announce too soon, opinions multiply, projections arise, and expectations swell. Instead of moving at God's pace, you start reacting to human pressure. Micah 7 verse 5 urges you to guard the doors of your mouth because revelation loses its purity when handled carelessly. Silence becomes your way of honoring divine authorship. Moving from this realization, you begin to see another risk. Publicizing partial miracles creates a pressure you were never meant to carry. When you reveal the beginning before the middle is secured, you become responsible for maintaining the image you presented. You start managing perceptions instead of letting God manage outcomes. You feel watched, evaluated, measured against what you claimed. That tension stifles your spiritual growth and weighs you down emotionally. What God intended to strengthen you becomes a burden simply because it was shared before it matured. And with that weight comes a painful truth. Those who rejoice with you at the start can become sources of doubt later. People who applauded your early announcement may question your delay, compare your progress, or challenge your confidence. Relationships shift, reputations wobble. Trust is tested, not because God failed, but because the testimony was spoken before heaven stamped it as complete. Proverbs 29 verse 11 teaches that a fool vents everything but the wise hold back, because wisdom understands timing. You are learning to protect not only your future, but also your circle. This naturally leads into a sobering reality. In premature light, the enemy has targets. He aims where you brag. He attacks what you expose. He disrupts what you announce without divine permission. Your words can reveal coordinates he uses to send confusion, discouragement, or counterfeit opportunities. Keeping quiet blinds his efforts and shuts down his access. Silence removes the target from your back. As this truth deepens, you begin to understand why the integrity of a miracle is preserved only when kept sacred until completion. When God finishes something, it carries a weight no critic can dismiss and no adversary can dilute. Until that moment, it is vulnerable, delicate, quietly forming. Psalm 39 verse 1 instructs you to guard your ways so you don't sin with your tongue, because even sincere speech can interfere with heaven's timing. Protecting your testimony means sheltering the story until God confirms it visibly. Then another layer of wisdom emerges. Silence teaches restraint and refines motive. God uses quiet seasons to expose why you want to speak. Are you seeking glory or God? Are you craving validation or honoring process? Are you eager to impress or ready to obey? Silence becomes a spiritual mirror that reveals the heart behind your eagerness to share. When you can hold your tongue, you show heaven that your desire is purity, not applause. Deeper still, you learn to hold back your story long enough for God to make it undeniable. When He finishes something, you won't need to convince anyone. The fruit will announce itself. The breakthrough will speak louder than your explanation ever could. Testimony becomes powerful, not because you told it early, but because God revealed it fully. When God shields a season, He does so by moving the right angels, closing the wrong doors, and quieting unnecessary noise, and your silence becomes the invitation for that shield to settle over you. You step into a protected atmosphere the moment you stop feeding conversations that weaken your focus. The hush you choose is not weakness, but wisdom, because guarded words create guarded paths. Psalm 18 verse 30 declares that He is a shield for all who take refuge in Him, and one of the ways you take refuge is by refusing to speak before the right moment has arrived. As this truth unfolds in your heart, you start to discern how the invisible world responds when you choose stillness. The spiritual realm rearranges itself to guard what God is building when you keep your mouth closed in trust rather than fear. Your quiet faith triggers movement. You cannot see alignments, redirections, and divine positioning. What feels like silence on your end is actually activity on God's side. Heaven's order shifts when you stand in disciplined restraint, trusting that God's plan does not need your announcement to succeed. Flowing from that awareness comes another layer of reassurance. Angels are released to cover someone who honors a sacred hush. There is a different kind of protection that lands on a believer who refuses to advertise what God has only whispered. Nahum 1 verse 7 reminds you that the Lord is a stronghold in the day of trouble, and that strength becomes intensely present when your obedience is quiet. Your silence pulls angelic assistance into the details you cannot touch, see, or influence. Protection increases when boasting decreases. And as divine protection rises, something else begins to break. Gossip loses its power. Words create pathways, and when you stop feeding conversations with details, gossip has nothing to circulate. That disrupts the channels through which curses, negativity, and subtraction try to travel. You remove access points simply by maintaining silence. Not every threat is defeated by prayer alone. Some threats dissolve because you refuse to give them material to work with. From that cleared space, God begins preparing you privately for what is ahead. Hidden preparation becomes your training ground, developing strength and character that you will need for sudden increase. When blessings come quickly unprepared, hearts get overwhelmed. But when God hides you, teaches you, matures you, and grows your endurance in stillness, you can handle expansion without being consumed by it. The stillness God calls you into is the greenhouse of your future capacity. Restraint also prevents premature consumption. When you speak too soon, people pull on your promise, drain your strength, and pressure you into performing results you are not ready to carry. Holding back keeps your resources, favor, and authority in reserve until the right time. What God set aside for you stays intact when you refuse to place it before spectators who do not understand the weight of what is forming. Guarding this space preserves the supply God entrusted to your future. With each protected layer, your spiritual immunity begins to grow. When your faith is not performative, you gain resilience against distraction, comparison, and insecurity. You stop living for applause or validation and start living from conviction. Restraint builds an internal fortitude that external noise can't penetrate. The Lord is faithful, and 2 Thessalonians 3 verse 3 promises He will strengthen and protect you. Maintaining this stillness becomes one of the ways that strength develops. And as your strength rises, your alignment shifts. Keeping confidence with God aligns you with divine discretion. You begin to hear Him more clearly, sense direction more accurately, and recognize warning signs more quickly. When you do not overshare, you create a sacred environment where God can speak without competition from other voices. Your stillness becomes the environment where clarity grows. Then you notice another mystery unfolding. The quieter you are, the more room heaven has to maneuver on your behalf. Your silence frees God to move people, disrupt plans, block attacks, and release provision without interference from your commentary. When you stop narrating your process, God takes full leadership of it. You see, in the instant temptation urges you to speak before the Spirit releases permission, you reach for something higher, because broadcasting may feel natural, but worship carries far greater power. The moment you feel that pull to explain yourself, defend your progress, or showcase what God is still forming, you exchange that impulse for reverence. Your mouth becomes an instrument of praise instead of presentation. Your thoughts lift upward instead of outward, and your posture aligns with someone who understands that silence itself is obedience. Psalm 141 verse 3 becomes your whispered prayer. Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth, because guarding your words guards your destiny. From that posture of worship, your next movement becomes inward rather than public. Instead of typing a post or crafting a caption, you open a personal journal and pour your revelations privately before God. Writing in secret strengthens your discernment, because not every insight is meant to be harvested in public. Some confirmations belong between you and the one who gave them. Your journal becomes a sanctuary, a place where revelation matures without exposure. In this hidden space, God shapes your understanding before He reveals His timing. This inward strengthening naturally leads you to the value of community, not a crowd, but a circle small enough to steward sacred trust. You build a tight group of intercessors, people who pray more than they speak and understand the weight of confidentiality. Their discernment protects your development, and their prayers reinforce what God is constructing in silence. These are not spectators, they are guardians. They help you hold the assignment without prematurely announcing it. As your inner circle prays with you, your daily life becomes another avenue for quiet obedience. You serve without spotlight, choosing fruit over fanfare. Your actions preach louder than any announcement could. God uses understated faithfulness to display character that is strong enough to carry promotion. When you serve quietly, you place substance above visibility, and substance is what God honors. Promotion flows naturally to those who prioritize obedience over applause. And in the middle of that quiet service, gratitude rises from within you like a steady flame. You thank God for every subtle step forward, every small confirmation, every unseen shift. You practice thanksgiving without commentary, letting your heart rejoice privately over the progress others cannot see. Colossians 4 verse 2 calls you to continue steadfastly in prayer with thanksgiving, and this private gratitude becomes fuel for your faith. You stop needing validation because your praise becomes enough. As the desire to share grows stronger, because progress always tempts disclosure, you channel that energy into fasting. Joel 1 verse 14 calls you to consecrate a fast, and fasting sharpens your spiritual discipline when emotions want to run ahead. When you refrain from food, social chatter, or digital noise, your spirit gains clarity. Fasting strengthens your resolve and weakens impulsiveness. You choose surrender instead of spectacle, depth instead of display. And as your spirit grows sharper, Scripture becomes your anchor. You memorize verses that train your heart to stay still, and you declare them when your emotions try to move you out of alignment. Living by the Word refocuses your attention on God's timing rather than your own urgency. Scripture builds your endurance so that silence becomes a place of strength, not strain. Along the way, you begin creating a testimony file, a private record of breakthroughs, answered prayers, and lessons etched into your journey. You store these testimonies, discreetly adding details as God moves, but you hold them close until He gives you the signal to share. When that moment comes, the testimony will speak for itself, because it will be undeniable, complete, and God-authored. And as all these practices deepen inside you, obedience becomes the clearest evidence of your readiness. Your restraint reveals maturity. Your silence reveals trust. Your hidden discipline reveals preparation. You demonstrate that you can carry the blessing without mishandling it, because your posture radiates surrender instead of self-promotion. God does not call you to timidity. Your silence is not weakness. It is the hallmark of a mature spirit, a sign that you are learning to steward what heaven entrusts to you. In a world that prizes noise, attention, and immediate validation, choosing restraint requires strength. Proverbs 17 verse 28 reminds you that even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent. Yet the truly wise person is recognized by the confidence in holding back, not by the urgency to speak. Your ability to pause is a declaration you trust God's timing, not your own, and you understand that obedience often looks like waiting. Silence is a form of armor. It demands courage to withhold narratives that seek applause or approval. The immature rush to announce every step, fearing that if they do not broadcast, their efforts will go unnoticed. But you, walking in maturity, understand that God's vindication is sufficient. When you withhold your commentary, you signal that your identity and validation come from Him alone, not from fleeting human recognition. James 3 verse 2 affirms that if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man. Controlling your tongue is a measure of your spiritual integrity and strength. Your silence becomes an unspoken authority that commands respect and preserves the sacredness of God's work. When you resist the temptation to explain or justify, you demonstrate that you can steward long-term responsibility. Maturity listens more than it speaks. You are attuned to heaven's timing, aware that some seasons are hidden for your protection and for the alignment of others who will play their part in your story. Talkers often amplify vanity, creating unnecessary exposure and inviting interference. The mature soul recognizes that stillness keeps your motives pure. Your focus is on God's mandate, not the fleeting admiration of the crowd. Every pause becomes a practice of fidelity to the covenant, every withheld word a step towards spiritual excellence. Leading a life of restraint is an exercise in covenantal obedience. 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 11 instructs you to make it your ambition to lead a life of peace, minding your own affairs and working with your hands. You are not called to operate in public performance. You are called to cultivate internal discipline, build character, and prepare for the responsibilities God will entrust to you in full. Private obedience outlasts public applause, and the maturity you develop in secrecy equips you to carry influence without being corrupted by immediate recognition. Restraint enlarges your capacity for leadership. When you do not rush to display or defend your position, you invite God to operate on your behalf. The mature person waits because they understand that time, opportunity, and favor are instruments in God's hands, not tokens to be claimed prematurely. Every quiet moment refines character, strengthens discernment, and fosters the patience required for long-term impact. When the world hurries, you steady yourself. When the crowd expects performance, you anchor in God's assurance. You learn that restraint is not resignation, it is power under control. Your measured calm signals security in the covenant rather than insecurity in perception. The mature soul does not stumble under the weight of public expectation. Instead, it demonstrates trust in God's design. Every withheld word, every private act of obedience, every patient pause becomes a crown of spiritual maturity resting on your life. You are not hiding. You are protecting what God has entrusted, stewarding the miracle until it is ready to be revealed in full glory. Silence is both your shield and your crown. When you wear it steadily, you are declaring to heaven and earth that you are prepared, reliable, and aligned with God's perfect timing. Your quiet life becomes a platform where God's favor, provision, and vindication converge. The world may not understand, but God is training you to lead without distraction, to carry blessing without jeopardy, and to manifest the fullness of your purpose without compromise. Beloved, God's voice often arrives in the spaces where words are absent. When you fill every moment with chatter, explanations, or justification, you risk drowning out the whisper that carries destiny. Job 33 verse 14 reminds you that God speaks in one way and in another, yet no one perceives it. The clarity you seek does not come through the rush of conversation or the clamor of public affirmation. It comes when you embrace stillness and listen with intention. In that hush, God opens doors, reveals names, and unfolds strategies that would have been missed in the noise. The stillness you cultivate is not emptiness, it is fertile ground. It sharpens your spiritual hearing, allowing impressions from the Spirit to settle deeply within you. Each pause becomes an opportunity to discern God's direction. You may feel nudges, impressions, or even see visions in the quiet moments that otherwise pass unnoticed in distraction. Psalm 25 verse 14 assures you that the secret of the Lord is with those who fear Him, and your reverent silence is the key that unlocks those hidden truths. When you commit to listening more than speaking, you are declaring that your steps are not guided by impatience, fear, or opinion, but by the authority of heaven. Silence produces revelation, but it also produces conviction. When God moves through stillness, the instructions are often incremental, small whispers guiding you toward larger maneuvers. You may receive insight about who to trust, where to step, or when to act. Recording these impressions is vital. God frequently layers direction so that each obedience leads you into a greater, previously hidden alignment. Following these subtle instructions faithfully ensures you are ready when the breakthrough arrives. Your obedience to small whispers prevents missed opportunities, missed doors, and missed moments of divine timing. Quiet cultivates peace even in seasons that seem uncertain. When God confirms a plan in the hush, it resonates internally with undeniable assurance. That peace is your confirmation. It prevents hesitation when the moment to move arrives. Isaiah 28 verse 23 invites you to give ear and hear God's voice, to pay attention and understand His ways. In the quiet, God illuminates the steps you must take, the conversations to have, and the alliances to nurture. The clarity you gain is the fruit of patience, not pressure, and it fortifies you against distraction, doubt, and deception. During silent seasons, God may speak in ways that feel subtle but carry immense power. A dream may reveal timing, a scripture may highlight a path, a strong impression may pinpoint someone who will catalyze your next step. Each signal is intentional, designed to align your heart and actions with heaven's timing. The faithful do not act until God has fully spoken. Every word in your silence is an invitation for God to instruct you, protect you, and amplify the blessing that He has already prepared. When the time comes to act, you move with confidence because the quiet has prepared you. Your steps are deliberate, precise, and backed by divine instruction. You are no longer reacting impulsively, you are responding intentionally. The whisper that felt small becomes the guiding voice that directs the momentum of your life. Your silence transforms into strength, your listening into insight, and your patience into power. Let your stillness be more than absence of words. Let it be a listening room. Let it be a place where heaven speaks, where confirmations arrive, and where guidance is received clearly and fully. When God nails the message, your steps will land perfectly, unshaken by circumstance, unopposed by confusion, and unassailable by the enemy. You are learning to wait to hear and to obey before acting. And in this sacred hush, destiny begins to move exactly as God designed. Your silence is not passivity, it is preparation. It is alignment. It is the conduit through which revelation flows, strategies unfold, and faith matures. Treasure it, guard it, and honor it, because in this space God is speaking, and your obedience ensures that every step you take is a step into victory. When God signals it's time, hesitation is unnecessary. The moment comes when waiting has fulfilled its purpose and the pathway opens before you. 1 Samuel 12 verse 16 reminds you to stand and witness the great thing the Lord will do. At this stage, action becomes your testimony. Movement validates faith. You are no longer in preparation. Heaven has aligned the steps, positioned the doors, and arranged the resources. Your task is simple yet profound. Move decisively with obedience and without the compulsion to narrate every moment. The miracle is not for explanation, it is for experience and revelation. Action and silence are not contradictory, they are complementary. Faith materializes when you act, but it preserves its power when you do not dilute it with commentary. Too often the desire to explain prematurely can diminish the sacredness of the unfolding miracle. Each word you hold back becomes a shield protecting what God has orchestrated from misinterpretation, envy, or interference. Psalm 118 verse 23 declares, "This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes." Let your steps echo this truth. Let your obedience amplify the divine act and allow others to witness the fruit rather than the process. Walking through open doors requires both courage and restraint. Isaiah 45 verse 2 assures you that God goes before you, making crooked places straight. You may notice opportunities presenting themselves in ways that surprise or overwhelm you, yet your response must be measured. Speak to bless, encourage, and edify, but refrain from narrating the inner workings of God's plan. Every detail you reveal unnecessarily is an opening the enemy could exploit. Instead, Anchor yourself in quiet confidence, allowing results to proclaim God's hand. The most powerful testimonies are authentic. They are observed, not constructed through explanation or overemphasis. Your posture in this season communicates much more than your words ever could. When you act with humility and disciplined silence, the world witnesses a different authority, one rooted in God's orchestration rather than human management. Providential timing is delicate. Rushing to justify, clarify, or advertise can compromise its integrity. Trust that heaven knows the schedule better than you. By stepping forward with prudence, you let the miracle mature visibly, naturally, and undeniably. Observers will see the transformation without you needing to annotate each step. Remaining quiet in the midst of movement also cultivates spiritual stamina. Your restraint becomes a demonstration of trust, proof that you understand the difference between ownership and stewardship. You are not orchestrating the outcome, you are cooperating with it. Oversharing may invite skepticism or even provoke envy, but when God's hand manifests without unnecessary explanation, the testimony becomes unassailable. Each action you take in this sacred hush is a declaration that you are aligned with heaven's strategy. Even in the excitement of visible breakthrough, remember that silence sustains authority. Let others marvel at the outcome while you maintain perspective on the process. The impact is not in the description, but in the demonstration. By walking boldly through the open doors, following heaven's lead, and limiting your commentary, you allow God to remain the central figure. Your life becomes a living proclamation, a moving example of divine orchestration. The miracle gains weight and resonance when it is allowed to stand on its own merits, free from human embellishment. You are called to act decisively, to embrace the movement God initiates, and to trust the timing of unveiling. Your obedience is not passive, it is deliberate, grounded, and spiritually intelligent. Each step taken with humility and quiet confidence positions the miracle for maximum impact. Let your life, your actions, and your visible fruit testify to God's goodness. Do not narrate the story prematurely. Allow heaven to shape the narrative. The more you restrain, the more resounding the testimony becomes, proving to all that this is indeed the Lord's work. Friend, you will encounter curiosity. People will lean in, ask questions, and probe into the movement God has begun in your life. The moment is delicate. How you respond will either safeguard the miracle or unravel the careful work God has orchestrated. Proverbs 12 verse 23 reminds you that a prudent person conceals knowledge, and in this season discretion becomes your strength. Your words are not meant to build bridges for gossip or speculation. They are meant to steward what heaven has entrusted to you. You can respond with grace, firmness, and quiet confidence, preserving the sacred while honoring those asking. Grace is the first layer of your defense. A short, gentle line like "I'm trusting God's timing on that" carries authority without revealing detail. It is a statement that signals your faith, not your vulnerability. By offering appreciation for curiosity without spilling the inner workings of the miracle, you protect the process while showing respect. Each question is an opportunity to demonstrate trust rather than justify actions. Your silence becomes an emblem of maturity, teaching others that faith thrives in quiet confidence rather than constant explanation. Redirecting curiosity is a powerful tool. When asked about what God is doing, invite others to join in prayer rather than debate or dissect the unfolding plan. This not only shifts the focus from you to God, but also channels interest into something productive and spiritually aligned. By pointing attention toward prayer and intercession, you transform natural curiosity into participation in God's strategy. Proverbs 18 verse 21 says, "The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit," emphasizing that guarding your words allows the Spirit to work freely in ways that human explanations could compromise. Boundaries are not barriers, They are protections for divine alignment. You can offer a calm kind, no comment when pressed, setting limits without offense. Silence in these moments is not coldness, it is stewardship. The miracle God is unfolding does not need justification in the court of public opinion. Your restraint safeguards not only the outcome, but also your testimony, ensuring that when God reveals the full story, it carries undeniable authority. The public cannot fully understand the hidden work of heaven, and your silence honors that mystery. Avoid the trap of defending God's methods to skeptics. Curiosity and doubt will always exist, but your role is obedience, not debate. By maintaining a quiet confidence, you demonstrate a deeper reality. Faith does not require validation from every observer. Proverbs 15 verse 1 teaches that a gentle answer turns away wrath. You do not need to over-explain or over-justify. A kind, measured response diffuses tension while preserving sacred space. Every inquiry handled with grace reinforces the spiritual intelligence behind your restraint. Teaching by example is another powerful dimension. Your quiet faith becomes a model for those around you, encouraging them to trust God in their own hidden seasons. People notice the difference between someone who speaks to perform and someone who moves to steward. Keeping counsel tight, sharing only with trusted advisors, and reserving public discussion for God's timing ensures that the narrative remains intact and the testimony remains compelling. You are cultivating spiritual authority with every word you withhold. When the time is right, a public revelation can be scheduled, and heaven will orchestrate the unveiling in a way that leaves no room for question. Your obedience in the meantime amplifies the impact, ensuring that when God speaks, the message lands with clarity, power, and credibility. Every question answered with dignity rather than detail maintains. The miracle strengthens your testimony and trains those around you in the art of patient trust. In this season, your words are precious. You are called to answer with elegance, restraint, and discernment. Your silence does not signify weakness, it reflects wisdom and maturity. By choosing grace over explanation, by redirecting attention to prayer, and by maintaining healthy boundaries, you honor God, protect the miracle, and inspire faith in others. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to steward not just information but the unfolding of divine strategy. Answer with dignity, not detail. Protect the process while you honor the people asking. Your restraint is a crown that preserves what God has initiated, and your quiet confidence transforms every probing question into a moment of spiritual teaching. Heaven is at work behind the scenes, and your measured responses allow that work to flourish beyond what words could ever accomplish. And now the day of unveiling is approaching, the day when what God has been orchestrating in the hidden will no longer be hidden. When God reveals, he will do it in such a way that your silence will have produced a testimony too clear to contest. Isaiah 62 verse 11 declares, "Behold, the Lord has proclaimed, your salvation comes. The moment will arrive with unmistakable clarity, a declaration from heaven that cannot be ignored." The unveiling is often dramatic. Doors you never imagined will swing open. Provision will arrive in ways that defy natural logic, and relationships that seemed broken or delayed will be restored. You will witness favor manifest in unexpected corners of your life, and reconciliations will occur that speak directly to God's timing rather than human effort. Each event will be a signpost of his intervention, leaving no question that he is the author of what is unfolding. Revelation 3 verse 8 reminds you, "I have set before you an open door which no one can shut." That door has been waiting for your patience, your trust, and your obedience in silence. You will not have to reconstruct the story or justify what has been happening. The beauty of divine unveiling is that God presents the narrative fully, the before, the during, and the after, so that every observer can see the seamless orchestration of his power. Psalm 40 verse 3 says, "He put a new song in my mouth, many will see and fear. The quiet stewardship you've practiced will now serve as a backdrop for the brilliance of the miracle. Critics, doubters, and skeptics will have no ground to argue because the result will speak louder than any explanation ever could. Public vindication often arrives in multiple forms. Provision may come as financial breakthroughs, opportunities, or resources that were previously inaccessible. Favor can appear in relationships, career advancements, or unexpected connections that align perfectly with your purpose. Even long-standing obstacles may vanish, and the restoration of what seemed lost will create an unmistakable declaration of God's faithfulness. The less you shouted during the waiting season, the louder the praise will be when heaven amplifies the outcome. Every act of restraint, every moment of trust, adds weight to the public testimony that God is crafting. Expect acceleration. God does not always reveal in a single moment. Sometimes multiple blessings arrive in rapid succession, overwhelming your expectations and confirming that He is orchestrating every detail. Your quiet faith has positioned you to receive not just one miracle, but a cascade of confirmations that testify to His precision and power. In this season, your private rejoicing and silent thanksgiving act as spiritual amplifiers, preparing your heart to receive the fullness of what He has been cultivating in secret. When God unveils, it is essential to honor His timing publicly with humility and gratitude. The spotlight is not for self-glorification, but for divine praise. Your silence, your obedience, and your patience now translate into a platform that magnifies God's work. Allow the final testimony to redirect every accolade and every whisper of wonder back to Him. As the praise rises, let it rise for God alone, because He is the orchestrator of every detail, the one who made the hidden visible, and the one who turned waiting into wonder. The unveiling will vindicate your quiet. The hush that you guarded will become the anthem of your life, a melody that testifies to steadfast faith, patient trust, and unshakable devotion. When God shows up, every suppressed word, every controlled impulse, and every act of restraint will have been worth it. Your life will sing His faithfulness, and those who witness it will know that the miracle was never dependent on human explanation. It was always in God's hands, and now it is undeniably visible. Prepare your heart to rejoice. Keep your private worship alive, even as the public recognition begins. The quiet you cultivated is your legacy, and the unveiling is the confirmation. This is not just a moment. It is the culmination of faithfulness, the reward of trust, and the glory of God made tangible in your life. Your testimony will shine because you kept silent when it mattered, and your life will now declare to all that God is faithful beyond measure. Beloved, this is a sacred rule: when God begins, you guard. When He unveils, you glorify. Between those points, you remain silent. It is not empty waiting, but active stewardship of what heaven has entrusted to you. Your obedience now protects the miracle that will one day speak for itself. Psalm 115 verse 1 reminds you, "Not to us, O Lord, but to your name give glory." Every restraint you exercise is not weakness. It is wisdom, a shield around what God has started in your life. Your silence preserves your testimony. The fewer words you use, the stronger the evidence becomes when God chooses to reveal it. In the hush, heaven moves freely, arranging people, opportunities, and provision in ways that cannot be replicated by human effort. The enemy listens for the first excuse, the first moment of impatience to derail the plan. When you refuse to feed that